everyone and welcome to the channel. Here we talk about brands, retail, consumer experience, and brand identity. Today, we have an interesting backstory on the fashion house known as Dior. We've all heard about it and seen it. So how did this brand go international after beginning in a simple boutique in France? Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell to support the channel. This is the story of Dior. Couture fashion design, accessories, perfume, and beauty products define the house of Dior today. But when Christian Dior launched his label in 1947, he had only one focus: to redefine the way that women dressed. The names that have succeeded him as artistic and creative directors read like a who's who of industry pioneers, and each appointment has brought with it a new era of aesthetics. With only one decade to attribute to Christian Dior working on his brand, between 1947 and 57, the span of his work was short-lived. But he became a fashion icon in this time, and his lead in Parisian fashion house has truly stood the test of time. With incredible creative directors such as Yves Saint Laurent, Dior is a brand of elegance, tradition, and femininity. Dior as a brand and aesthetic is known for its resurgence of traditional silhouettes that, when compared to contemporary trends, felt innovative and classic. These juxtapositions surely confirm why Dior made such a stamp on the fashion industry in just one decade, with the luxury embodiment of the collection feeling like an entire juxtaposition to the post-war era it was born out of. Before breaking into the fashion world, Dior ran a small art gallery that his father had bought for him. He and a friend ran this gallery, where they sold work by the likes of Pablo Picasso. His attraction to the arts and the creativity that accompanies this is exemplified by his dedication to this gallery. Obviously, having his father buy the art gallery for him demonstrates the privilege and wealth that preceded Christian Dior prior to the Great Depression in 1929. However, the Great Depression in 1929 contributed to the collapse of his father's business and consequently the closure of his art gallery. It was at this point he worked with fashion designer Robert Piguet, before Dior's military service in 1940. This marked Dior's breakthrough into the fashion industry and his role as a designer. 2 years later, in 1942, he worked for couturier Lucien Lelong as a primary designer with Pierre Balmain, and yes, he was the founder of the fashion house Balmain. It was December 16 in 1946 when Dior founded the house of Christian Dior. Dior himself was known to be very superstitious, hence he had certain habits within each collection. For example, each show had at least one model wear his favorite flower, a lily. Each collection had to have a coat named after his place of birth, and he never began a show without consulting his tarot card reader. In 1957, Christian Dior met with Yves Saint Laurent's mother to tell her that he has chosen Saint Laurent to succeed him at Dior. He said that she was confused by the remarks, as Dior was only 52, but shortly after, during that year, Dior suffered from a fatal heart attack at age 52, leaving Yves Saint Laurent as the artistic director at only 21 years old. Christian Dior's first collection was titled Corolle, which translates into English as Corolla, which is essentially the petals on a flower. This alludes to the beautiful flower-like silhouettes that made the dress so iconic, largely the petal imagery in the full-bodied skirts. The official year of conception of his fashion house is considered to be 1947, when he launched his first collection. The average dress used around 20 yards of fabric, so this was a serious walking contradiction to the post-war fabric restrictions. However, this actually served Paris as a fashion capital, as it disguised and contrasted the post-war reality of the country and Europe with opulence and decadence, reigniting the idea that Paris was the opulent fashion capital of Europe. His debut show created the iconic Dior look. This iconic look is the calf-length skirt dress with a dramatically cinched waist and fuller bust, a nod to the past while creating a new present. During the war, designers were at somewhat moral conflict, as the economy in France and Europe did not really accommodate luxury fashion. Working for Lucien Lelong, Dior dressed the Nazi officers' wives and French collaborators to preserve the fashion industry. In the meantime, Dior's sister Catherine was captured by the Gestapo for joining the French resistance, resulting in her imprisonment at the Ravensbrück concentration camp. She fortunately survived and was liberated in 1945. 2 years later, her brother Christian would name the debut fragrance as a tribute to her. The power of his sister is said to have inspired the powerfully feminine silhouettes. Born in 1905, Dior grew up in the idyllic seaside resort Granville-Normandy as one of 5 children of a bourgeois family. At 23, he pursued a career as a gallerist in Paris and surrounded himself with creative pioneers at the time, Salvador Dali, Jean Cocteau, Christian Dior, and ultimately indulged in the avant-garde and following the aftermath of the Great Depression. Dior found his passion for sketching and creative couture. Undeniably talented, he was hired by Swiss couturier Robert Piguet. Eventually, one of his first creations was worn by Brazilian style icon and socialite Aimé de Héren to the Circus of Ball in Versailles in 1939. Interrupted by the outbreak of World War II, Dior resumed his artistic affinity for couture in Paris, until, in 1949, Marcel Boussac enabled his creative directory of an entirely new couture house, Christian Dior, and from there, Dior was set to revolutionize the face of the fashion industry. So what do you think about Dior? Even if you're not a fan of the style, you surely can appreciate the fascinating backstory of all these different brands and their founders. If you learned something today, don't hesitate to subscribe, it surely helps us out tremendously. But for now, I'll see you in the next video.